we go. Okay.
Perfect. Ooh, I like your shirt.
Thank you.
My son has one of the glow in the dark ones that they brought out probably like 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. My other band that I play in, not Lunar, but Helium Prime that I play drums for, we got to tour with Archers a couple years ago. So
They're awesome.
yeah, wonderful people.
Yeah. Yeah. I interviewed Brittany. I think it was, gosh, almost probably 3 years ago now. It was the Abyss album.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when we toured with them
Oh,
was with
nice.
that album. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that album is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't super familiar with them like prior to that. Like I heard them, but not a ton, you know. And it was definitely a treat getting, to go for a month and a half and just listen to their set night after night.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, they were just on point every day, you know.
Yeah, her vocals are intense. That's
Yeah,
cool. What a fun experience.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It sure was.
That's cool. So the album's been out for a little over a month now. Um,
Yeah.
with being an independent band, I know it's more difficult to get the word out there. But this album's so cool. It's so
Thank you.
interesting. It's it's such a cool concept and such an is interesting idea that melds into so many other topics outside of the main character, you know.
Uh-huh.
So how did you decide first of all to utilize that platform as far as like an illusionist, a magician, and how were you able to combine kind of real life experiences within that story?
Um, so so I mean that a lot of what I will write about in general, I think draws from real life experience, as you said, as I feel most musicians and artists do in general, you know. So I mean, a lot of it had come from my own feelings over the years of being a musician and the struggles that it brings, you know, and the fact that you oftentimes you're losing money and you put so many years into devoting yourself to this, and some people only just see it as a hobby still, you know. And it's very difficult these days to make a living at it, you
Yeah.
know, even when you've been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. You know, you have all these guys that you look at as professional musicians, and they're probably, they're doing Twitch streams and lessons and all these different aspects to make ends meet, you know. Um, and so I think that, the core of the concept definitely came from that for me. That I've been drumming for over 20 years and just doing all these different aspects of working music retail, teaching lessons, touring, gigging, writing albums, all this different stuff, you know. As for the illusionist part of it, I have no good explanation for that, honestly. It was more of just like, I want the stories to be a little more metaphorical and not so literal, you know,
Hmm.
and so that it's something that can relate to more people, that you can kind of see yourself in this character in one form or another.
Right.
And so that was kind of, so I didn't want to make it an album about a musician, and
Right.
so it just
Two
it
on
turned.
point.
Right. And so it turned more into like, okay, well, what would be something that's similar but could be a cool story to build around? And so the idea of having it be a magician just came to me, and then it kind of built from there, of having his story arc of the same kind of thing of questioning his craft, but then turning it into, he disappears? Is he, is he a master of his craft, or did he fail at life? And that's for you to decide, you know.
Yeah, I was very curious about that because it's not the last song on the album. It kind of shifted the idea in my head, but I was like, oh my gosh, that could be like the end, like
uh,
he's done. So
right.
the video was super cool. who did your video? And I mean, it's heartbreaking to watch because you can just see him worn down and just losing the love of what he's doing, you know?
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, tell me about the video.
Yeah, so the video for the track Showtime, so that was done by a team of people in the UK called Crystal Spotlight.
Mm,
And they've done a lot of stuff for Porcupine Tree and Haken and stuff like that. They're
nice.
incredibly talented.
Yeah,
Uh, and so yeah, they really knocked it out of the park with this because it was very little of me just giving them kind of like the general idea and the direction of what it was, and they just ran with it. um and when they sent me proofs of stuff to watch it was like, yeah, you got it, I have no
yes,
uh,
exactly what I pictured. You
yep.
guys just mastered it.
Yep, totally. And they did kind of incorporate that ending of the album into
Yes,
the video as well, which I thought was kind of cool because it does kind of stray a little bit from the song theme itself in the greater scheme of the album. But it does also kind of show you more of the finished story arc if you do listen
yeah.
to the entire album.
Right. Gives people a glimpse of what the overall story is going to be. Oh,
Yeah.
it was super cool. Super cool video. I watched it multiple times and the song itself is the when he goes into the this is who I am, that melodic change
uh,
is such a cool shift. It's very appeasing to the ear and every time it happens, it's almost like a chill factor. It's such a cool yeah, shift is the best word I can come up with.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with how that song turned out because even sometimes when you have the ideas, they don't quite translate into the finished product exactly as you're hearing them
Mhm.
always. Especially from my standpoint, being a drummer that's trying to come up with a lot of this music, and so I play a little bit of guitar, a little bit of piano, but a lot of times the ideas that I have, I'm having to program them and then give them to the other musicians and kind of say like, this is the idea that I'm kind of having in my head. And sometimes it shifts into something completely different, sometimes it turns out exactly how I heard it, and that's one that I
Mhm.
feel like is exactly what I had heard from the get-go.
That's so cool. Yeah, well, the whole album itself has got so many changes and you have so many different instrumentations in there, which is really interesting. It's almost like a play.
Uh-huh, yeah. And I like the theatrical aspect of it for
Oh,
sure.
definitely.
I've always been a fan of concept albums in general. I feel like the tracks are the chapters of the story. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not so much you can enjoy them on their own, obviously, that and
Right.
but when you put them all together, you're going to get the full story and really get more into it.
Right. Which is yeah, what you've done with the other albums as well. Um but yeah, this one, yeah, definitely is more yeah, like a play and it made me like want to read the story. There's some bands that are coming out with like comic books or actual like novels and stuff and
Yeah.
I'm like I want to read this full story, I want to see like the depths of all of it
Yeah.
and use the music as a background.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. That would be something pretty cool to turn into like a comic book, especially. I love reading comic books, and my dad, who did the cover art of the first two albums, not this one, but he's been a big like comic book style artist my whole life, and
Mm.
so it's something I like that we've been able to collaborate on. He has done these album covers for me of music that I've written, but it would definitely be cool to do a comic book.
It sounds like it's kind of a destiny type thing. You guys working
Yeah,
together for something like that too would be so cool. And
yeah,
just another element of, I mean, like you said, the music industry is so tough right now. To make money is it's almost impossible, especially in the metal industry. So you almost have to get super creative with some of those things. And I know
yeah.
obviously obviously it ends up, of course, costing more money. It's not like it's, free just to create. I don't know, do a digital one. It still wouldn't be free, but maybe would be a little bit more cost effective.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. It's yeah, it's hard to find that balance to make
Hmm.
ends meet, especially doing it, independently and not
Yeah.
having anybody that's gonna no label that's gonna front you money to
Right.
come up with a lot of this stuff. And part of that is why this album took 3 years to
Hmm.
happen, because it took me a while just to secure funding for things to
Right.
press CDs and vinyl and things like that, and it's worth it in the long run. But at the same time, myself and pretty much everybody that's a part of Lunar, as like the core musicians, most of us, we have families to support, and
Hmm.
so there's a certain point where you're like, I can't put forth that much of my own money, or take that risk of my own, and that's why Lunar is a band that hasn't toured before. We've never
Yeah.
played live,
That's
uh,
so crazy.
and yeah, we've never even collectively all been in the same room together,
Jeez.
um, and so it's just because it's not that we don't want to. It's
Hmm.
I would love to make that happen, but so often doing a self-funded tour, you come home just losing money,
Yeah.
and we are all in, like I said, in places in our personal lives with families at home, and that we can't afford to do that. And so
Hmm.
we have to wait until the time comes that we can do it right, and at least make sure, like, all right, are we at least going to break even for this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Get the name out there, get more momentum going, but not, yeah, completely lose your way of life
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
illusionist.
yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
it makes it tough. Yeah, and not to mention also, like I said, because we're so spread out. Also, most of us are in California, but California is a big place, and
Right.
we're spread out, between northern, central, and southern California. So some of us are still 8 9 hour drive apart from each other, and then
Right.
Chandler, the vocalist, he's over on the East Coast in New York area, and so
Jeez.
it's that it would cost a pretty penny just to get us in the same room.
Right. Even to
Yeah,
start rehearsing for a tour.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So
So
it's
how did you connect with Chandler with him being on the East Coast? Or
I actually found him online. I
hmm,
found him on a website of session musicians, of just like, hey, I'm a pro vocalist. You can hire me to do the thing. And so like we talked that way, and it turned out to be like, oh yeah, this is a great fit.
yeah. Yeah, it really is. I'd already told you I hear in a couple songs some of those like patent octaves. Yeah, he's got an incredible vocal
Yeah,
style.
yeah, yeah. He really does, and brings something very unique to the table, I feel, too.
For
Uh,
sure.
in the I think it adds to the uniqueness of the style, and having his style of vocals with the style of music.
Yes. Yeah, the collaboration works so much better than I think you would anticipate on paper,
Uh-huh.
like the harshes just really complement, the cleans.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. It's super fun. Are you planning on doing more videos for it?
Videos for this one are done.
The three.
There's technically four. There's another
Oh,
one that did come out. There's one for the instrumental track for my next trick.
yeah, I saw that one. I saw Showtime and I saw the juggling chainsaws. Which one did I miss?
There's also a lyric video for Turn Off the World.
Oh, I don't think I saw that one. I'll have to
And
look at that one.
that one is another one that has artwork done by my dad, actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Um, and so yeah, so it'll just those for this album.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned obviously you and your dad collaborate a lot together. So was music always going on in your house when you were growing up? Is your dad a huge music fan as well?
Not at all.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, he very like he will admit to you that he's tone deaf and like never big into music. My
Wow.
mom did introduce me to some when I was younger too. So when my parents are divorced, and so when I was with her, she introduced me to some like some Hendrix and Tears for Fears, stuff like that.
Oh, those
Uh,
are like totally different sides of the spectrum, which explains the
yeah,
prog and jazz and all
yeah,
the different elements of Lunar.
yeah, totally. And but yeah, no, my dad got the painting side of it, and I can't paint at all. I'm terrible at it. And I got the music side, don't know where from, and but it didn't come from them. That's where my parents are not musicians. So
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Usually, um, big time musicians are have grown up around music their whole life. So that's
uh
so what got you interested in playing?
I don't really know, honestly. It was kind of always just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I definitely did have music around other elements growing up. It just didn't so much come from my parents so
Yeah.
often. But I remember, when I was 11, I think it was like I had this idea of being a drummer in a band before I even knew how to play.
Uh-huh.
That was just like in my head as that's the thing, that's what you do. Uh,
Right.
and so yeah, I don't even really know how to explain it honestly.
How
Other
funny.
than it's just part of me.
Yeah. Right. It was an intuitive, instinctual part of you.
Yeah.
So what were some of the first bands, songs, drummers that you remember really like grasping onto?
Big impact on me at that time around 11, where it clicked for me of like this is what I want to do, was Slipknot for sure.
Uh-huh.
That when I was 11 when their self-titled one came out, and
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the ones that like that first was like, oh my god, this is awesome, this is what I want to do. um and
Gosh,
so,
and yeah, and he was an incredible drummer. So you went from like 0 to 100.
yeah, yeah. And so it was very, yeah, extreme from the get-go, as an 11-year-old, of like the first introduction to metal, going right into that. um and I'd had a little bit before that. I'd had like siblings and cousins that had shown me some a little like White Zombie and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I know Slipknot was the one that really like made it click at
Huh.
that point. And then the shift into like progressive metal was when I was 13 and I heard Opeth's Blackwater Park.
Oh, jeez.
and
So good.
and it was that was like the most life-changing one for me, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I can just remember like sitting on the foot of my bed staring at my stereo, just like jaw dropped, like, what is this?
Right.
Like,
What is happening?
yeah.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
and so I think it's fairly apparent still to this day. You hear the Opeth influence in everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so songwriting wise and also drum wise, I think a lot of my playing style came from Martin Lopez, the drummer of Opeth in that era.
That's cool. That's so cool. Yeah, those are I mean, obviously very a progressive band, but it's funny that you mentioned Slipknot because as you know, when I was talking to well, as you know, I talked to Cheney yesterday, and as I was
Uh-huh.
talking to her, that was her first big metal influence too,
Oh, really?
because she's from Iowa.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was so interesting. Like I don't hear obviously Slipknot's huge. I mean, it's not like they're a small band by any means, but when I interview people, that's not a band that comes up a whole lot. So it's interesting to, just in the last 2 days, it's been like the highlight band.
I feel like also there's almost like at least for me, there was in like high school, there was like a stigma around stuff like Slipknot too. You know what I mean? Like once you get introduced to like the underground side, the death metal side of the world, then the more mainstream new metal, it's just like, oh, that's not real heavy stuff.
Yeah,
Let me show you real heavy stuff.
right.
And so there was definitely those years where it was like, oh, okay, never mind. No, no mainstream. I want the real heavy stuff.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and but then you get older and then you're just like, that's fucking stupid.
I
Why would I be like that? They were a huge influence on me. They're great
mhm.
musicians. They're obviously great at what they do. They're huge, like,
Right.
yeah.
I know. It's so silly. It's so silly. It's so silly that metal would even do that to each other when like I had talked about with Taney too, like where most of us are outcasts, like listening to metal was not and has not made I don't know about nowadays. I don't really go outside my music bubble a whole lot, but it was, not widely accepted. And so it was like, why are you not accepting each other when we're like still such a small community?
Right, yeah. And I think it's gotten better
I
for,
think
in recent years for a lot of it, and also I think because so many of us that felt that in like the high school era, we were high school kids and feeling
mhm.
outcasted and peer pressured, and then you grow up and you mature, and then it's just like, no, you can love it all. I don't care. I'll listen to Slipknot and then I'll go listen to Tears for Fears right after. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like
Right.
it doesn't matter. Uh,
Right. Like what you like.
yeah, exactly. And so it's good to have that inclusion, and I think that is important in metal and in the music industry in
Mhm.
general, because of, like we said, with these, the struggles of being a professional musician, that you need a support system these days. You can't do it by yourself, and you need people to lean on and support you through it. Um, and so much of it has to do with the connections that you make too. And like I've told some of my drum students before, is like, you sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but
No, you're good. It's
you,
interesting.
you don't the music industry is not like sports. You don't have to lose for me to win, you know
Right.
with nobody on this planet just says, oh, I like this one band and that's it.
Mhm.
You can like and support as much as you want, and that's what we need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more the better. My goodness. It's music. I
Yeah.
mean, there's never too much.
Right.
Um so what made you decide with this album to add like the horns?
um Really, I just kind of go with what feels right for the moment. Because we did one track on the first album too that had some trumpet, I think,
Mm,
or French horn, maybe, I forget, some horn instrument. And with this one, there was just a little bit more of it, especially with like a little more jazzy influence at parts, that
mhm.
it's just like, this part feels like it needs saxophone to it. And so it just, I want it to go where it naturally goes.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
so it's just more of an yeah, instinctual thing. Like you hear in your mind what it should sound like and go, okay, well, let's start getting a hold of people that are a master of that instrument.
exactly, yeah.
That's
And
cool.
again, that comes into play with the connection aspect of it too, is that
Mhm.
I want these other people that are doing these guest spots on Lunar albums. I want people who are fans of Lunar to maybe say, oh, I had never heard of that guy before, I'm going to check out his bands too.
Right.
Or vice versa, like, oh, I'm a fan of that guy's band but I've never heard of Lunar, I'm going to check out what he did with that. Like it just helps with the support aspect, I
Oh,
think.
for sure. Yeah, I agree. So if you guys are able to eventually go out on the road, how is that going to work with the horns? Are you going to just bring on the whole group of everybody, or will it be more like backing tracks?
It would we'd have to be strategic about it to make it work,
Yeah.
I think. So it would most likely just be like the core 4 or 5
Mhm.
musicians. And we would probably choose a set list that didn't have too much of like the
Yeah.
horn stuff in it. If we decided to play stuff like that, then we would probably have to backtrack those
Mhm.
little parts, because it wouldn't be worthwhile to bring somebody that is only going to come on stage for like a 30-second spot
Right.
every night.
Right.
Um, and so we would probably do it that way, but I would try to avoid that as much as
Yeah.
possible, so that there wouldn't be too much that would be backtrack, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Hopefully none at all. And
Mhm.
but yeah, that's I think what we would do if and when the day comes, which I hope it does.
I hope so too. I hope so too. I think it'd be a really fun live show. I obviously understand why it's easier said than done, but so since it's been out for a little over a month, how has the momentum been? Do you feel like it's getting a lot of attention and traction to kind of see a glimpse of the possibility?
I think this has been the best response so far of any Lunar album, you know. And I think that the hope is definitely still there that it's going to do that, that it's going to, that momentum will continue to grow,
Mhm.
hopefully, so that that becomes a possibility that we can hit the road at some point. But honestly, regardless, it's something that we're most likely going to keep doing either way.
I
Yeah.
hope so. Yeah.
It's as long as the inspiration is there for us, we're going to keep doing. I mean, we're already, you know, starting to work on another album
Oh,
as of
that's
right
awesome.
now. And so it's, you know, this project, as it is in one form or another, has been around for almost a decade now.
Jeez.
And so it's taken a long time to get to this point even, but over that time it's continuously gotten bigger and bigger. So
Right.
I hope that it will continue to go that way, and maybe within, you know, by the next album cycle or maybe the one after that, maybe there will be some tours to go along with it.
Yes, yes. Do you know what the concept for the next one's gonna be? Obviously, you don't have to tell me. I know it's still very new, but
Kinda.
okay.
Yeah. We have some rough ideas. We actually have two different albums that we're kind of like working on the backbone structure of, and I don't know which one is going to actually come next. So, um, yeah, that we'll leave it at that for now, though.
That's exciting. That's exciting. You guys are just like, all right. So obviously you're feeling the momentum of all of it. And if
Yeah,
you're like already jumping right into the next one,
yeah,
that's
definitely.
cool.
And also, I mean, like it's been exciting to see the public response to this, but
Mm,
and for me, this one, The Illusionist, has been done for so long because we I tracked my drums for this album 3 years ago. You know,
jeez.
we started the
In the
process.
pandemic.
Yep, it was literally, it was March of 2020 when we
Oh
started.
my gosh.
Um,
Crazy.
and so a lot of it, you know, had to do with we had to adapt because of pandemic stuff. So a lot of us were recording ourselves for the very first time,
Mm,
and communicating over these long distances. And so usually, like with albums past, I had been in the room with each person individually when they did their parts.
hmm.
And with this one, that couldn't happen. So it was a lot
Right.
more just sending things back and forth and having to make adjustments as we could, you know. Um, and figuring out the being the recording engineer side of it too, which for most of us was a very new thing at that point, you know.
Right. So obviously lots of learning curves, but do you feel like that process is something that you would feel comfortable doing again, or do you want to go back to what you were doing before, or
uh
both?
I we probably a little of both,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. I mean, like for me, you can kind of see my setup back here that's kind of halfway torn down right now, but um you know, I since then have recorded tons of drum parts for a bunch of different albums of my own, you know.
Oh,
uh,
cool.
and it makes life easier for me as a session musician too, where like when people want to hire me to drum on albums, it's a lot easier to just look at my own schedule and not have to work with an outside studio, you know.
Right.
um, and uh, and it saves them on cost too, because then they're not paying for me to have to give a bunch of money to an outside studio as well.
Right.
I have all the equipment that I need now to get it done on my own. So I definitely would continue doing that. I would want though to at least go back to the me being in the room with them when they track their final parts, because
Mhm.
I feel like that would be a lot easier to at least have the one-on-one feedback of like, hey, try this, do this. This is more what I'm going for, you know. Um,
Instead of the long drawn out process of
yeah,
messaging back and forth. And yeah,
yeah, and
right.
like, you know, somebody takes an entire day tracking their parts to one song, and then they send it, and then I have to take a whole day saying, okay, here's all the notes of the things that I want you to change. Go back and do these parts again. Like
Right.
that just makes it way more drawn out
For sure.
than if you can just approach it right in the moment.
Right.
Obviously,
Right. Which I mean, I guess during the pandemic, a lot of us all we had was time, so it probably worked out okay then. But
yeah,
now that you're like back to a million projects again, because you are super, super busy.
yeah, yeah. So it definitely, you're right about that. I wouldn't want to take that kind of time, but at the same time that for the writing process, we still are kind of going that way. You know what I mean? Like Balmore and I have been talking a lot with the stuff that we're working on now, and just sending a lot of voice clips back and forth, and just like, okay, hey, try this and try this, and oh, I had this idea, uh,
Yeah.
because I'm in Sacramento and he's in LA area, so we're still 8 hours apart from each other.
Jeez. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't ever think that those areas are that far apart. My brother lives in Fresno, which
Okay.
is obviously not the prettiest part of California, but um,
Yeah,
I know he is. I feel like he. Now I'm trying to remember how that is. Closer to Sacramento, right?
a little bit. Yeah, he
Yeah.
Fresno would be somewhat close to a halfway point
Oh,
between
okay.
the two.
Okay, that makes sense.
But closer to Sacramento. I think Fresno would be maybe like 3 hours from me. Something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, gosh, I feel like they're, but that would make sense because they'd be the middle point. I
Uh,
am really tired this morning. I don't know why I slept, but I think I'm just tired all the time anymore.
yeah. That's just the way of life. And yeah, and you're a parent too, so that's part of it.
Yeah, but he's 15. I mean, oh, well, he'll be 15 tomorrow.
Oh,
How much can I blame on that at this point? I mean, I'm
okay.
still going to, but
Yeah. I blame all my tiredness on that because my kids are 2 and 4. So
well, you have a good excuse then. My child is not dependent on me by any means anymore.
uh,
You have two very dependent young kids. That's
uh,
plus
yeah,
you're like I said, doing a million different things when it comes to music. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, you're allowed to be tired.
yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
so are you wanting to continue to be because some bands want to be independent. Are you wanting to be independent when it comes to Lunar, or are you wanting to sign with a label?
That's a great question. It's I'm open to the possibility of either way.
Hmm.
It's I realize that we are in an era where you don't necessarily need a record label.
Yeah.
Like as shown, I can get an album out and people will hear it.
Hmm.
However, there are labels that I know are going to be able to give more support financially, the
Right.
possibility of touring, better promotion, better distribution, things like that. More shopping options for people around the world as opposed to having to
Hmm.
pay for everything physically coming from me, because I know that puts a deterrent on a lot of like European fans of having to pay that international shipping.
For
So
sure.
there definitely would be benefits to signing with the label, but it would have to be the right one
Yeah.
for me. I wouldn't take just anything necessarily. It would have to be something that I am sure is going to move us in the next step in the right direction.
Right. And still allow you to have that creative freedom.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah. I feel like Napalm's pretty good with those types of things. I feel like
yeah.
they're
From
pretty.
everybody that I know that has been on Napalm has never had anything negative to say. So that would be, they'd be high on the list for me. So if they
Yeah.
watch this, somebody in Napalm, call me.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. I actually have sent one other band and it's been probably a year, maybe even 2 years ago to Natalie, their PR, was
Uh-huh.
like, "Hey, you need to pay attention to this."
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you got an in with Unleash the Archers there too.
Yeah, yeah, and also I play for Planeswalker as well, and our singer Sozos is now the new vocalist of Gloryhammer as well, and they're on Napalm as well. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just didn't they just come out with an album recently?
they just posted a single like yesterday or
That
something.
okay, that's what I get a million emails a day, and so I couldn't remember. I knew I had seen the name, but I couldn't remember if it was the actual album or if it was getting ready for.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I think the album comes out in like a month or two or something.
okay, cool.
Yeah, and so they're I know they're doing a US tour because Sozo's, even though same long distance kind of thing, even though we do Planeswalker with him, he lives in Europe, you know.
Hmm.
So we rarely have ever seen him in person.
Crazy.
And so Gloryhammer is going to do their US run, so it's definitely a time that we're going to make it a point to go see him, you know.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be fun. So Planeswalker, that's clearly a Magic the Gathering. Yeah,
Yep.
those cards are the most aggravating to go against and the most fun to play.
I I know I'm not supposed to say this being in Planeswalker, but I don't play Magic the Gathering. I have nothing against it. I think it's super cool, but you can ask Jason, who's the guitarist of that band, that I told him I'm afraid to get invested in it because of how I know I will spend so much money that I don't
Yes.
want to spend on it, you know.
Right. No, that's totally understandable because it is not a I mean it's cheap to get started, but you get so into it. And then if you're playing against people that have been playing for a long time, you're going to get destroyed until
Yeah.
you put in the money to build
Yep.
the decks.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the type of person I am. Is I would hyper obsess about it and be like, okay, I'm gonna build my whole life around this right now, you know. And
That's my husband too. My goodness.
uh,
It used to drive me crazy, but I've gotten to a point to where I think it's a really um I think I'm jealous because I feel like my brain is trying to go in so many different directions and I have so many things that I'm trying to concentrate that I can't seem to focus on one thing, and
huh.
he is like when he gets his focus on one thing, it he runs with it and it becomes the obsession, and everything. He knows everything about it. He grew up playing Magic. So
Okay.
he's who taught me how to play. And I still feel like I'm like way behind in I'll be like, well, what does this card mean? Well, just read it. It's just what it says. And I'm like, these are not English words to me. I don't know what that means.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I read a lot and I
I'm
don't know what that
trying to read it. I don't
right.
understand this.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand the words. I don't understand how the words translate into the game.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in that boat too for the few times that I have played, and it's just I feel like I'm just a warm body, and somebody else is just telling me like, just do this and do this. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's like it's their language, and so they
Uh-huh.
and I think some video games and other like RPG, whether they're video games or table games, have a lot of the same verbiage. And so I think for a lot of people who play those types of games, it's just like part of their vocabulary. Where for
Yeah. Right.
people who don't, you're sitting there going, it doesn't make as much sense as you think it
Uh-huh.
does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So prestidigitation,
Uh-huh.
it's like my favorite word in the entire world. We also play Dungeons and Dragons. We've been
Oh,
playing for
nice.
the past it'll be 3 years, I think, this month. And
Okay.
one of my characters, because we have two different campaigns, one of my characters has a spell called prestidigitation.
Nice.
And every time I go to use it, I say it like I don't know. Have you seen the animated Disney Sword in the Stone?
Yeah, not in a while, but yeah, I have.
There's a word, I don't even think it's that word, but Merlin at some point when he is I can't even remember. I'll have to go back and watch it. But for some reason, he pops into my head and I say it like it sounds like either he would or he even does say it every
Uh-huh.
time I do the spell. And so when I saw that as the first track of the album, I just laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, I love that word. But it's a totally a magic word. So it's a
Yeah.
good one to start the start the album off with.
Yeah, there was a time where I considered that being the album title actually too. but I was surprised when I talked to people about it, how many people hadn't heard that word before.
Mhm.
And so I didn't really want, and it didn't feel right anyway,
Yeah.
the being, it's more of the story of the illusionist more than
The
the the
magic itself.
prestidigitation, the magic itself,
Right.
and so it still didn't feel right. But yeah, I wanted it at least to have a track title with that, and so it felt good for the instrumental opener.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Well, and I like how you have those little instrumental parts. When I first started listening to it, I didn't have experience with Lunar, and
Uh-huh.
so I thought it was gonna all be instrumental, and I was
Oh,
I was fine with that because I like instrumentals, and the music is done so well, and there's so many different instruments, and it's since it's progressive, then it has, the different shifts and changes. But then
uh-huh.
when I heard Showtime, I was like, oh my gosh, their vocalist is insane. And so
Uh-huh.
then I was just like even more full throttle. Um, yeah,
Nice.
it's such a cool album, but I like the instrumental breaks in it too. It flows really well with the storyline and with what's going on, and it kind of gives you that ambiance of that background that you're not necessarily 100% sure, what's going on, obviously, but also you can kind of still follow that journey without the lyrics.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, and that I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it. Yeah, it should, the instrumental parts, I feel like, really convey the feeling well, of
Mhm.
like stepping into the shoes of the character, and
Yeah.
feeling where he's at in the story.
Yeah, very mood driven.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can answer this or not, but is this album going to be the end of The Illusionist, or will he maybe make an appearance later down the line?
That is another good question. I can't answer that because I don't know.
Yeah, fair
uh,
enough.
I this was written as its own standalone
Story.
story.
Mhm.
So it wasn't something like that. I had like a predetermined plan of, it's going to continue beyond this, but at the same time, it's also left open ended, and
Yeah.
to the the leaders, the listener's imagination,
Mhm.
of what happens. So it's possible.
Yeah. I think it'd be cool. Whatever you decide would be cool because it does definitely have a satisfying quote unquote ending. But yeah, it is still open enough to maybe he makes a reappearance.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah,
Such a magic
and
term.
maybe it'll be short too. Not a whole album.
Right.
Like Dream Theater with Metropolis, how part one is a song and part two is a whole album. And I
Right.
just do in reverse. The Illusionist part two just as a single song where he pops back up. Maybe. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm just coming up with ideas off the top of my head. So
Yeah, depending on the next concept, yeah, it might
yeah,
might work, might not, but
yeah.
I think it would. I mean, you guys, since you guys do concept albums, it would be interesting if you did interweave, like like Stephen. I don't know if you read very much, or if you read Stephen King, but Stephen King is like the master of taking characters from other stories and like just throwing them into quick little parts of other books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
Interesting.
do you have you ever seen any Stephen King movies?
Yeah, yeah.
So Richie and Bev from It
Uh huh.
make a quick appearance in the book 11/22/63, which has to do with like time traveling and someone trying to go back and keep
Kennedy.
JFK from being assassinated. But there's this, yeah, so they're going back in time, and so there's this part where Richie and Bev are like learning how to dance or something, and the main character is walking by them, and they have this quick little interaction, and so he does stuff like that. It's fun.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that is cool. That little Easter eggs for the fans to find.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love stuff like that. That's very cool.
Especially for ones that have been with you guys, from the beginning, might be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because this one, really has the concept, the story. The previous albums were a little more thematic. I feel
Right.
it
True.
wasn't so much a story to tell. it was more of the general theme
Mhm.
that put the whole thing together. But this one was the first one that it really was a, a story with a character,
Right.
and so I think it would be cool to have that character pop up somewhere again in the future.
Right. If I remember right, your first one did have like mythology in it
Yes,
though, right?
yeah. So,
Calliope,
so
I remember, was one of them.
yep, yeah. So the first album is based on the Greek muses,
Mhm.
and so like each track is named after one, and the music and lyrics kind of go with what that muse represents. Like
Right.
the tragedy or comedy or whatever it is. So
So
again,
cool.
not a central, not a character, but just
Right.
that ongoing theme. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then the second one, Eidolon, was after Ryan, who I co-founded the band with when he passed away.
Mhm.
And so that one I wrote kind of on like the stages of grief
Yeah.
is where that one goes.
Yeah, that's I'm sure was a very difficult and cathartic album to write.
Yeah, definitely was. I again hit the nail on the head. Difficult and cathartic. It
Mhm.
had the it was hard, but also it means a lot to me for that reason.
Absolutely. Right. Right. And what a cool thing to be able to do in honor of your friend, you know?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Mm.
I would like to think that he would be proud of that, of knowing that it kept going, and I felt like that was the best way to honor him with it too. You know what I mean? Of
Sure.
like, hey, I'm gonna keep this going even though that you're gone,
Mhm.
and but this is, this album is the very much about the personal relationship
Yeah.
of he and I, and the loss that was there.
Yeah.
And also again something I feel like everybody in the world can relate to in one form or another.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just lovely. I mean, you know, unfortunately, those things are a part of life and it's one of the hardest parts of life. But yeah, being able to utilize such an amazing medium for that, I just think is so neat. Um, so with that, I ask everybody because I think it's an important question. What are some things you do for self-care? I know you don't have a whole lot of time for that, but the more time we don't have for that, the more time we really should be making for that. So what are some things, if anything, do you do for self-care?
let's see. Comic books.
Hmm.
I love reading comic books. That's one of my things that is, outside of work, music, parenting, anything like that. It's like, okay, I'm gonna make my weekly trip to the comic book store and
Yes.
get whatever comes out this week, and I spread them out throughout the week as I can.
Do you have a certain either character series or I mean DC or Marvel or something outside of that? Like do you or is it all of them? All of them and any of them?
All of them,
I
really.
love
Yeah,
it.
no, I have my handful of ones that I really like. I like Moon Knight a lot. I like the
Mhm.
Punisher, and I'm looking forward to. I think next week they start a new Green Arrow line that I'm looking
Oh,
forward
fun.
to a lot. And but I'll also, step out of DC and Marvel, and there's a few, like I have some Rick and Morty ones,
Oh.
and like goofy, more kid oriented one, Darkwing Duck and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. That was what, 90s? Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so yeah, but yeah, so I'll get all of it though. Like,
Yeah.
it's usually, 10 or 15 books a week that I'll pick up and just try and go through as much as I can.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh,
So that's the oh, go
I
ahead.
feel like that's the biggest thing. And then yeah, I mean, like, I'll do the more typical, I guess, like relaxing shows and video games here and there, but not too much. Not I'm definitely not a gamer.
Yeah.
You know,
You're like you're like, I want to be careful with that. I'm not either, so I'm not gonna start like attacking you on those questions. I wouldn't even know where to ask. But it's so funny because there is it's like I'm sure you were careful about that because gamers are so intense.
uh-huh, yeah. And instantly, like a lot of times you get those people that are just like, oh, what do you play on, what, add me on that. I'm like, nope, no, I don't do any of that.
Right. I I used to play Mario a lot,
Uh-huh.
and I played Sonic when Sega came out.
Uh-huh.
So my husband a couple of years ago got me the Nintendo Switch because
Mhm.
that's, I mean, obviously not Sega, but so my family will play Mario Kart or we'll play Mortal Kombat. But
Nice.
other than that, like I don't even know. My son loves to play video games, and so I like try to watch him and keep up on it, but I completely out of the loop.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it, like the relaxing games are like what you're saying, like the simple ones that I can kind of turn my brain off to, like I'll do
Yes.
Mario or Kirby or something like that.
Right.
Or that, the majority of my TV watching or game playing still revolves around comic book characters. Like I will
Yeah.
watch, like the Marvel shows on Disney Plus, or like I've been playing Gotham Knights on PS5,
Oh,
the
fun.
Batman game, so like it usually is revolving around some kind of comic book character.
Do you have any comic book tattoos?
No, I don't actually.
What?
Yeah, no.
Oh, I think that needs to change if you're that into it. What are some so I'm obviously Moon Knight is probably one of them that you watched, which was so good, and I think they're doing a second season now. What are some other shows that are like your I think you said comfort shows?
Let's see. Like with comic book characters or outside.
Either way.
Okay. Yeah, because pretty much any of the comic book character shows, they're on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but other than that, stupid comfort shows are, the typical ones, I guess. The Office, Friends, Psych.
Oh, Psych was good.
Yeah, yeah, I miss that show.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Um,
I'll
yeah,
watch that
those,
one.
again, the comfort aspect of, where you can kind of just like turn your brain off, get into a positive headspace, laugh a little bit before bed, that
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
Mine's been Big Bang Theory for like the past probably six
Oh,
months.
yeah.
I've
I had just recently went on a kick with that one too,
so good.
actually. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, I have a hard time going outside. I watched that 70 show and Big Bang Theory a lot lately. The Office was one I went like went for a long period of time as well, and always can go back to that. Scrubs will always be my all time
Oh,
one though. Scrubs is I love it, but it makes me cry in some episodes, so I have to be careful.
right, right. Yeah. That's what Scrubs kind of scares me for that reason. Like, I feel like I'll forget the ones that are like, oh, shit, this one's hitting me right in the feels, like,
Yes.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah, there's one that I even know the beginning of the episode, and as soon as the beginning of the episode comes on, I'm like, nope. And it's the one with Brendan Fraser with
yep. That's exactly what
oh
I was going to say. Yep.
oh it
Yeah.
it's so sad. Oh
Yep. Yeah,
yeah.
that one. As soon as you started your sentence, I was like, it's that one. It has to be that one. Like, because I remember that. I haven't watched Scrubs in a long time, but I did
That
watch it,
one stuck out.
and that one was like, yeah, it gets you every time.
Oh, it's the worst. I started watching it like when it very first came out. I don't even remember why, but it was when, you had to wait every week to watch it.
Uh
And
huh.
so I was living in Eastern Idaho at the time, and every I can't remember what day. I want to say it was Mondays, but I can't remember for sure. But every whatever day it came out, I'd watch it.
Uh huh.
And I was, telling my family, I'm like, oh gosh, it's the funniest show ever. And just, would always talk about all the crazy things that happened and how funny it was. And I called my mom bawling on the after I watched that episode. And she was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I just watched Scrubs. And she's like, I thought it was supposed to be funny. This one was not.
Yeah. And thought he's probably thinking something. What is wrong? Why
All
are you?
right, what happened? Who died? I'm like, oh, what's his name in the show? Jordan's brother.
Yeah. Right.
I can't think. Ben. Ben?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was it. I think that was it.
Ben died. Who?
Yeah.
It's funny how you can get so emotionally involved in characters. I'll do that in books too.
Yeah.
Just I read this book called Empire of the Vampire. I think it was last year. And it and it's a vampire novel.
Uh-huh.
But it's like an adventure action big storyline novel, and
Okay.
there's this one part in there that because he's like the main character is like a very gruff character. He's not he's kind of a loner. He's not super nice to other people. He's just a vampire killer, and he doesn't really want to have any connections with anybody else, but he has a really strong connection with his horse.
Okay.
And he like I really like um fantasy type stuff. When he has a sword that every time he pulls it out, it starts giving like recipes.
Okay.
Just like the D and
That's
D part of
different.
me is like, that's amazing.
Uh-huh.
But there was one part in that book that he broke down in it, and I bet I bawled for an hour.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yep.
silly.
Yeah,
So
you
silly.
get invested
Yeah,
in these part of it is not for books but for the shows at least the actors portrayal too, like
for sure.
you feel that connection to them. And
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
that Scrubs episode, it just yeah, because it just takes you for
Yeah.
unexpected. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
even more unfair that yeah, because you just the first time you watch it you just don't see it coming,
No, you're like, oh, we're going to a birthday party. Everybody's dressed so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Terrible. Terrible, terrible. Well, I'm excited for this album. I really hope that it gets more attention. I think it deserves all the attention, and I don't know, outside of sharing it, I don't know how to build that momentum even more. But it's really needs to be heard because it's so cool, and it's intriguing on so many different levels, not only musically but the storyline. So I hope that you just build more and more momentum with it, and I'm so excited to see what you guys are going to do next.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it and share this around, because that's the kind of stuff that is going to help. And I just wanted to reach as many people as possible that are interested in hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's all we can hope for.
I can't imagine there's many people that wouldn't listen to it and not only automatically really enjoy it because it's just musically so impressive and incredible and exciting to listen to, but you get the story so quickly too. You don't have to try to think about it or reach for it. It's more present than sometimes some songs or concept albums are. And so
Uh-huh.
it's easy in that way, but yet it's exciting because the more and more you listen to it, the more and more you get.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um,
that's cool. I like that. That's good to hear. And yeah, it's something that it can kind of grab you in right away. And
yes,
and also, the other side of it too, I feel like there's a lot of musical diversity on it, so I
for
feel like there's
sure.
a lot for maybe not every single part is going to be for every single person, obviously, but I feel like most people, if you give it a chance, you're going to find something on there you'll like.
I agree. And I don't know if I don't know if I agree that people won't enjoy every aspect of it. I think because you have mixes within each song, even
uh
with the instrumentals, I just feel like it's one of those that is for the majority of people, and that's really tough to do. It's really tough to pull off.
Thanks. Yeah, 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 thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you creating something so awesome. I've been enjoying it so much. I was really excited lately, like I said, when I very first started listening to it, I was like, this is so I automatically took for me, I get so much music all the time that unfortunately, depending on how much time I have, sometimes I only get like quick little windows of stuff
Sure.
to be able to make a decision.
Sure.
And that's not super fair to the musicians, but that's just, how it goes.
Yeah.
But with this one, I didn't want to stop, and that's so cool because that's really difficult to grab someone's attention that quickly and go, oh, I'll put it off till later. I didn't want to. I just wanted to keep listening to it.
Yeah, that's the best kind of compliment I could hope for right there. So thank you.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you for taking the time as well. I look forward to chatting with you anytime, but definitely anytime when it comes to any of your musical projects, especially this one, because I'm already full on board with this one.
Definitely. Yeah, next album we'll chat again for sure.
Yes, yes, please. Awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Hopefully, it's much nicer there in California than it is here.
Yeah, it's nice and 70 and sunny.
Oh, yeah, go get some sunshine and enjoy it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.